Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple systems that 12 days ago were transitioned to what I usually consider as the final phase. And I don't run all my systems through all the phases, but in the case of these two systems right here, these two bins with the European night crawlers, ENC is my abbreviation for European night crawler, and these systems, they went through their normal lifespan of, composting materials. I gave them a period of foraging, which I haven't really been doing a whole lot of lately, but these systems got to forage for about a month. And then 12 days ago, we started the horizontal migrations. So we set up feeding zones in these systems in the hopes that we can lure the worms out of the finished castings on the opposite edge. And by leaving it uncovered, hopefully this stuff is going to become a little bit drier, and that'll further help motivate the worms to move out. But to help boost up the motivation even further, I got a replenishment for the food that we used 12 days ago to build those horizontal migration feeding zones. So they're getting horizontal migration feeding number 2 today, 12 days after the migration started. I'm curious to see how the depopulation of the castings are coming along. So let's get these systems up on the bench and let's get to work. This to me looks like some of the paint from my wall. So that certainly doesn't belong in here. And there's sometimes this, I don't know, certain materials, I don't know if it's just bedding that got into the game way late and shows no signs of breakdown due to that. Other times you see something that just doesn't look like a natural material. I don't know, some of it's sort of a gut feeling, but it is interesting how it seems to get ejected out to the surface in some cases. So I don't know, there's just certain types of bedding bits which to me sometimes look like a material that somehow didn't really belong in my collection of bedding, but somehow snuck in and ended up sort of contaminating some of my systems with material that appears like it's not going to break down. So I must admit I was a little bit concerned about the moisture level. I mean, I know that I moistened all of the bedding we put in here pretty thoroughly with my spray bottle. And my spray bottle is here once again on standby, ready to go to help dampen the feeding zone further. But my hope is that things were nice and comfortable here and easy for the worms to acclimate to. So let's see. Not sure if this is perhaps just some leftover coffee or something. I hit a little pile of dark material, which could have just been leftovers from the last check-in from 12 days ago when we set up this horizontal migration feeding for the little guys. I'm just kind of exploring the material to see how worm occupation of the stuff over here is progressing. It seems like the worms are pretty comfortable in this stuff. There's a good many of them. And springtails seem to have come over too and started occupying the material. There's all kinds of big chunks of cardboard in here. Luckily the basic supply of bedding is still pretty high. But I did hope to maybe, bring over the material a little further in my direction, stack it up a little bit higher, making ourselves a little bit more room over in the horizontal migration feeding zone, and then being able to pile in a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more bedding and food for these little guys. Over here in bin number 1, I'm definitely seeing a good many worms collecting in the horizontal migration feeding zone. Kind of makes me wonder what the castings are going to look like as far as remaining worms in the material. If you were with me last time, you'll remember that the cardboard that we set up is sort of a single piece that had its own floor, so there was no way to really get under the partition, and that went all the way around basically. So the worms would have had to have either nibbled their way through the cardboard or somehow gotten all the way underneath it and come out the other side on its other end where it's open. So I'm not sure how all the worms made their way over there. One way or another they did, and that's the important thing, which is nice. And that's not to say that bin number 2 didn't do well, because it too had a nice number of worms starting to collect over in the horizontal migration feeding zone. But maybe there's just a few more that need to catch up with the rest. I mean, it is kind of nice after you plow through the horizontal migration feeding zones where there's plenty of worms all over to start seeing the finished castings and how few worms are remaining in this stuff. So I mean, there's definitely worms all over the place in this stuff, but hopefully our tilling it up and stirring in the dry stuff off the top surface down into the more damp material that we bring up from below, hopefully that just in the end helps dry all this material out here, further motivating the worms to get on the move, you know, and try to find another place to be. And that other place to be is clearly the horizontal migration feeding zone, where we would like to see the worms congregate, so we could do a nice haul out at some point. And I think that haul out's going to be imminent. Pretty soon we're going to have to get around to doing it, so I'm going to have to start getting a couple bins prepared for these little guys, so that when we're ready to haul them out and launch off new systems, we've got those systems ready to go. So let's do a quick aeration over here too, just to make sure everything looks okay. Not a lot of worms, you must admit. Let's not forget to bring some of this dry stuff from over here over to blend that in as well. This is going to make all this stuff out here very rapidly go from being perhaps still a nice comfortable moisture level for the worms to something that they probably don't really want to be in very much. I mean, I don't think it's going to cause them any harm or discomfort, but I think they will sense the difference in the fact that some dry material just got blended in, and hopefully this aeration also helps further drive things towards dryness over here in the collection of castings. But I think we're drawing this out a little bit more than we need to. Let's get the food going. Give them their delicious little portion of kitchen scraps. And even though we saw a good amount of bedding material remaining from 12 days ago in the horizontal migration feeding zones, I think it does make good sense to supplement it generously. It's kind of easy to push everything over now that all the finished castings were sort of tilled up and aerated. It makes them really easy to shove over in my direction. I even thought about coming in with a little garden fork and puncturing the cardboard barrier so as to make it less of a barrier. But I don't really think it's necessary. I think the worms are doing fine making their way over into the horizontal migration feeding zone. As far as moisture goes, I think we'll have to make a judgment call, because I mean, you can see a lot of frost developing on a lot of these pieces of frozen cucumber peel, and besides cucumber peel, you can see there's chunks of tomato here too, and little bits of pepper, even some citrus. Make sure they've got their vitamin C. And as you can see, it's a nice little variety of stuff. All right, and I think we've managed to divvy it out pretty fairly into both systems. So back to the decision about adding moisture. We're going to be seeing a lot of moisture kick out of this frozen material as it thaws. So from that perspective, the moisture will probably go up and dampen the material that is right below. And what's on top here, well, don't forget we were covered up with bubble wrap, and we're going to go right back to being covered with bubble wrap. That creates a little bit of like a terrarium effect. Keeps the moisture down, prevents it from evaporating away and being lost. But you know, to me it just seems like you can never go too overboard when the topic is moisture. Well, I mean, you can definitely go overboard. In the conditions like this, though, I believe we can definitely be generous and try to do everything in our power to create a horizontal migration feeding zone that's really alluring for the worms to want to come over and explore. And equally important, just as important, is the comfort being high too, so that when they get over here they stay and don't even imagine making their way back out into the finished castings that are just every day getting drier and drier because they're being left open to the air to continue to become more and more arid and uncomfortable for worms to want to hang out in. So let's see, actually we want to keep the bubbles and the worms down on the material. So here we've got to turn things around. There was a couple worms on here too. I just folded them over the way I did because I wanted the worms to be kind of comfortable and not exposed to drying air. And now we're just kind of putting them right back the way we found them for the most part. So the migration continues with its second feeding now, and I've got homework. I've got to get some bins ready for these little guys, someplace for them to be moved when the time comes to haul them out. So that's it for the check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.